Cardinal fans have been called the best fans in baseball. Well, we're going to see how good they are if the team goes into a full rebuild.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Cardinals crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network, where it's your team every day. I am the host of Locked On MLB. My name is Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever they call it these days, and on Instagram. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But get a hold of us here on the YouTubes, and make sure to use that hashtag Everyday Sully. It helps us find your comments. But I said it's a crossover. I'm a man of my word, and we are not flying solo today. No way. We are bringing in, no way, Jose Oquendo, are we flying solo today? Coming in hot from the middle of America. It's JD Hafron of Locked On Cardinals. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. We're trying to stay warm here in the Midwest, bro. We're getting hammered by snow. We're not prepared for it. Usually January, February is when we get smashed. Here we are. Started December, and we're already 8 inches in St. Louis. Not cool.
Wow. Well, just to give you an idea, we here in Pasadena, California, are also going through a living hell. I had to put on a sweatshirt, and it got to the low 70s today, and it's like the Revenant here. You know, it's at some point you wonder, am I gonna have to sleep in a horse? How cold can it get here in Pasadena? I may actually have to wear long sleeves tomorrow. But enough about gloating about the weather here. The St. Louis Cardinals, let's face it, it's not been since losing that wild card series to Philadelphia a few years ago, where they had the lead in game one. It looked like they were about to just turn it into, all right, Philadelphia's there an afterthought. They were the last team in, and we're looking really good. And they got the band back together. They got Pujols and all these players back there for one more glorious time. They fell apart in that playoff series. And since then, the Cardinals have not been really relevant. I mean, they did have a winning season in 2024, but they haven't been relevant, and they weren't relevant in 2023 at all. They were actually pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they were the worst kind of team in that they weren't bad enough that you should blow this up, but they weren't good enough to get in or even be a factor in an expanded playoff. This has been a growing concern for a team that had a marvelous 2010s. Tell me your thoughts. Is this team going to rebuild? Is this team going to make a run? Try and make a run for it. What's the strategy here?
Well, the strategy, whether fans are on board or not, is that this is a rebuild. They don't like using that word. Apparently, that's a big no-no. They use things like runway last year to describe what they were doing. The runway they were giving younger players so they could see what they have in-house already. But it is a rebuild. The Sonny Gray trade is something that obviously was you don't do that if you're trying to win. You don't trade away your best pitcher. So you wouldn't do that. Nolan Arenado is on the market as well for a second straight year. Brendan Donovan has been shopped as well. Just kind of gauging what the interest in him. It's not one of those situations where they got to get rid of him or he's going to be a free agent next year and he's going to get away for nothing. It's just like, hey, we're just trying to get as many pieces as we can at this moment. We know we're not in a win now window, which is very odd for Cardinals fans. So, but they haven't been in one, like you said, since 2022, really. Since the debacle that was 23, they've kind of had the writing on the wall where like, all right, this is going down the wrong path and we need to punt. We need to move on from some of these guys. And unfortunately, it took a little longer than I think some people wanted it to. And now we're here where Nato is still on this roster, taking up space. But hopefully things like that will get changed this offseason as opposed to last year when Sonny didn't want to leave and Wilson Contreras didn't want to leave and Arenado didn't want to leave and vetoed a trade to Houston. So things seem to be moving a little more swifter this time around.
I think one thing that also, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Cardinal fans, but I do think something that has made these last couple of years really tough to swallow is to see after basically 2 straight decades where
Mhm.
they were pretty consistently a playoff team. They're
Yeah.
up from 2000 to 2009. They were in the playoffs, i- if not every year, then almost every year. And then, of course, between 2011 and 2019, they seem to be in the NLCS every year, and they picked up a couple of titles, a couple of the pennants along the way. And so, for Cardinal fans, up and from basically from the year 2000 to 2022, uh, with a couple of hiccups here and there, it was pretty steady of contention. And then you see this decade where, yeah, you had the wild card loss to Los Angeles and to Philadelphia. They haven't won a playoff game since winning the division series against Atlanta. They haven't won a
Yeah.
playoff game. And
Right.
I know I don't have to tell you that. And then you look and you see some of the pieces they traded away, like a Rosarena wins a Cy Young, Adolis Garcia is a playoff hero. Randy Rosarena is a playoff hero. All these are Cardinal farmhands, and you're kind of looking like, geez, this is not looking great. I'm sorry I feel like I'm throwing salt in your wound here, buddy, but the two big honking moves to ensure a dynasty into the 2020s, Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, has is a Bustarinho, and isn't their fault. It isn't because it isn't because the two of them have stunk, but you can't deny the fact that, you know what, those two players were brought in to keep the glory going, and
Mhm.
it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happened. 2022, you have Goldie winning the MVP. You have Nato as a
Hmm.
finalist for the MVP. You get
Right.
Albert chasing 700 and just going nuclear in that second half. And then it all came to a screeching halt with the loss against Philadelphia, which
Yeah.
I'm going to call out Connor Thomas, who does Locked On Phillies, because we were texting during that. And he was like, it's over, man. This was like seventh inning. He's like, it's over. You guys are going to win this series. And lo and behold, everything changed in that final inning. And then, for whatever reason, both Arenado and Goldie fell off a cliff in
Yeah.
2023. Like
Yeah.
everything just went, way south. It wasn't like a gradual, like,
No.
they still hit 30. No, it just went whoom. And then they're looking around like, okay, well, who's our next two pillars that we're gonna have, to lead the charge here when both of these guys are gone. And those were supposed to be names like Nolan Gorman and Jordan
Hmm.
Walker, and neither of them have panned out. None of their pitching prospects have panned out. And it really kind of got down to what made the Cardinals so good for so long was that they had a very strong farm system, and they were
Right.
able to complement the pieces they would bring up by making trades for those big names, the Matt
Right.
Hollidays and the Scott Rowlands, using pieces
Larry
from the farm
Walker.
system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, using pieces from the farm system to go get those big names, Jim Edmonds. And then they would they'd lure them in almost and be like, all right, let's lock you up. You had some fun here, right? That's how they worked it over the years. And it just stopped working over the last like 3 or 4 years. Their farm system fell way behind in the times. They weren't producing enough prospects. Nobody wanted to trade anybody to them. And it just kind of fell apart. And it got to a point where John Mozeliak, who was president of baseball operations, he decided to move on after a long, successful tenure, although a lot of people in St. Louis are still upset with the man. But he had a really good, long, successful run with the Cardinals, so it's hard to get mad at him for a couple of stinky bad years. But you mentioned it. The trades that they made did not pan out. The
No.
move for Marcelo Zunas, trading Alcantara and Zach Gallen, did
Yeah.
not work out. They made a lot of mistakes along the way, and it's finally caught up to them here in 2025 going into 26.
And Tommy Edman, by the way, there's another former Cardinal who had postseason glory with another team there.
Yep.
Mozeliak, he's like the TV show MASH. It was a great run. It probably went on for about 3 or 4 years too long.
Yeah.
Uh, but but unfortunately, unlike MASH had a spectacular ending. And yeah, it might be time to turn the page. When we come back, we're going to talk about what the best route of turning the page is and why I think the Sonny Gray trade was actually one of those rare trades that may help out two teams. All right, let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel. You know, JD, I'm telling you, NFL Sundays, they move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum, swing, and every highlight moment. Oh, so good. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift and a receiver gets hot and the defense tightens up or momentum flips after a turnover, and FanDuel lets you jump in the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as the guys heat up or cool down. And you can bet the next touchdown, drive results, who's going to get the next safety, totals. You know what? It makes every snap, every drive, every penalty for holding, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season and just the joy of watching a sporting event isn't enough for you, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Hey, thanks so much for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcasting network. Name a better one. You can't. You can't. And it's because you got shows like my show. You got Locked On Cardinals. You got Locked On Yankees. In fact, I can name 29 other Locked On baseball shows, but I'm not going to. I could do that for the NFL. I could do that for NHL. I could do that for college basketball. I could do that for we have so many Locked Ons. We're eventually, it's going to fold into itself, and there's going to be Locked On, where there's a podcast, with a Locked On podcast, where they cover the other Locked On podcast. That will be the ultimate folding over the layer cake we can have. Okay, I need to stop immediately. I like the Sonny Gray trade for St. Louis and for Boston. Boston needs another good starting pitcher. They don't need an ace. They have an ace. They need another pitcher that can hand the ball to every 5 games and say, give us a shot. He also doesn't have a lot of years left in his contract. So it's not like they signed him to like a 19-year deal. I mean, it's a short-term move. And the Red Sox are trying to build upon the momentum of finally getting back to the postseason. Richard Fitz played in the majors for the Red Sox. He's a major league pitcher. You're shedding payroll in a rebuild. You get a young major league pitcher. Brandon Clark is a decent pitching prospect. So they got a major league pitcher and a prospect to put into their system for a guy who's not part of their long-term plans. So I think if that's the kind of move the Cardinals are going to make, if they're going to start trading away some of their veterans, that is, put a major leaguer on their major league roster and put a decent player in the system, then that's how you rebuild. And if this is the way they're going to pull some of these off, because they are going to have to trade Arenado, they are going to probably have to trade Contreras, they're probably going to have to trade Brendan Donovan while he has value. All these different players are going to be sent off. So I felt good. I felt good about that trade for both teams. What do you think?
I agree. We were pretty excited to see what they were able to get in return. Sending $20 million. That was the one thing that was good to see, that ownership goes, look, we get it. We got to eat some money here. If we eat a certain amount, we can get better players in return. So they sent $20 million to Boston as well, but they were able to secure, as you mentioned, a major league pitcher who should be ready to go in the rotation for next year, on a very thin rotation for the Cardinals right now, but Fitz should slide right in. It should be one of those guys. And then they are very excited about the upside that Brandon Clark has. Left-hander, triple digits, wicked slider, has some control issues, which I've had some of the fans and have commented. They're like, that's not always such a bad thing. I mean, we saw John Kruk in the All-Star game turning the helmet. Lefties don't want to face crazy lefties who have control issues. So that's something they'll work on. He's 22 years old, still got plenty of time to get those things ironed out, which is going to put Hein Bloom's player development task force into motion. We're going to see what they can do with some of these guys and what they can do with them and mold them into hopefully, major league players that impact this roster sooner rather than later. As you mentioned, Arenado, I don't know how much they're going to have to eat of his remaining contract to get much in return. That was the thing, is Sonny Gray at least was in demand, right? He still had pretty good seasons with the Cardinals. Nato's been going in the wrong direction for 3 straight years, and most people have just given up on his bat. The glove still plays, but I don't know who's all interested in acquiring that bat the way it's been the last few years. So it's going to be tough. He's also got the no trade clause, so that limits where they can send him. But at the end of last year, they both kind of said it out loud without really saying it, that hey, we're heading in different directions, and what's best for Arenado and the Cardinals is to split amicably. Wilson Contreras still appears to want to stick around. He said he'd listen if there were any deals out there, but he kind of wants to be a part of this rebuild that St. Louis has going on. So whether he changes his mind at some point, whether he sees other pieces get moved like Nato after Gray, if Brendan Donovan goes, maybe he decides, maybe I don't need to be here anymore. But so far, he seems to be a guy that does want to stick around. And as you mentioned, Brendan Donovan, they're going to see what people would give up for him. He's a commodity that can do a lot of things. And, teams like the Tommy Edman trade, teams that are ready to win and going to compete, they love to have that kind of Swiss Army knife that Brendan Donovan can bring to the table. He's not expensive. He's got a couple years more of control. So there's a lot of reasons why teams that are going to compete for a championship this year would want to get their hands on him.
I think you also see with a universal DH now, to have a player who can play multiple positions and give a regular a spot in the roster, in the lineup, I mean, as a DH, I think that's one of the things that, like, Max Muncy, why he's so valuable, and Edman for that matter, is so valuable with Los Angeles. By the way, I got to correct something here, and someone called me out on it. Thursday is good said, did the Dodgers sign Turner? Can't find any concrete news about it. I made a mistake in yesterday's show. I said that the Dodgers had reacquired Justin Turner, and apparently what had happened, the source of my information was a friend of mine who texted me and said, Turner's coming back to the Dodgers. And he texted me that just before my show began. And I realized afterwards when I texted him, there was a question mark at the end of his text. Turner coming back to the Dodgers, as if to say, hey, what about that move? And I reported it as if it happened. That's why
there is a move that just happened that you were going to report.
Oh, yes, there is a move that just happened. By the way, I just want to say, I know the Cardinals have, in fact, let's get to that in segment 3. But, the Cardinals have some pieces. Mason Wynn is a nice player. I mean, is he a superstar? I don't know. But, he's a nice player. You're hoping Jordan Walker, who didn't have a good year last year, but you're hoping he's a talented player, can turn some things around. You're hoping Victor Scott II, and if he doesn't work, you go right to Victor Scott III. And of course, the player that I want, I know he's not a top prospect, but the player I want to become the next legend in Cardinals history, and that's Jimmy Crooks. Because his name is Jimmy Crooks. That is the name. That's a name of a gangster. Jimmy Crooks is out there, but see, I mean, I love names like Jimmy Crooks, and he's a catcher, young catcher. He only played a handful of games for the team, but I want Jimmy Crooks to succeed because Jimmy Crooks would be in the Gas House Gang. That would be alongside Frankie Frisch and Pepper Martin and all those guys there. And of course you have Lars Nootbaar, who, I mean, didn't have a very good year last year, but I love that name. I absolutely, I mean, and he's a fun player too. So of the players that are going to stay on the squad, who do you think are the best building blocks, and who do you think the best prospects are to look forward to?
Well, Mason Wynn kind of took over. I feel like the role that was supposed to be like the new face of the franchise coming up was supposed to be Jordan Walker. He was supposed to be Batman, and Mason Wynn was going to be Robin. They're best friends off the field, and they were coming up together. And then Jordan Walker has had his issues, which he's working on once again this offseason, and is hopefully unlocking all of that ability that made him a first-round pick and one of the the top hitting prospects in baseball just a couple of years ago. But Mason Wynn his game has continued to rise. Offensively, he's still kind of getting up the speed there. Not great numbers offensively, but he goes out and wins the Gold Glove this year at shortstop. I think he's a pillar that if you're talking about young guys that you want to eat arbitration years and give an extension to, I feel like Mason Wynn's got to be at the top of the list. He's one of those guys that just he just exudes confidence. He's just very smooth in everything he does, and I think the bat is going to get better as he continues his career. The one that stood out last year that nobody really saw coming, but all he's done is hit throughout his career is Alec Burleson, whose nickname, by the way, Sully, in case you're unaware, is Biscuits. So I think you would love that to have Biscuits
on your team. Biscuits, Newt Bar, and Crooks. Try to tell me that's a Private Eye show from the 80s.
Right. And he's a fun dude. Like, he's a character as well and keeps everything light in the clubhouse. He's one of those guys. Goes out and wins a Silver Slugger Award this year. So he's somebody that I don't think they thought was going to be somebody that they can build around, but all he's done is succeed every level that he goes to, whether it was in college, whether it was in the minors where he won a batting title, and now he's doing it in the major leagues where he took a big leap last year where he always hit righties pretty well and really struggled against lefties, but he turned that around this past year. So he's somebody that has also been mentioned in trade talks because, who wouldn't be interested in somebody like that? But from what I've heard, it's going to take a king's ransom. They'd have to be blown away by an offer for them to even think about moving Burley. But those are a couple guys. JJ Weatherholt is their top prospect, and that's kind of the reason why you're seeing them shop Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman and Arenado. They're moving infielders around because they got to find a lane. They got to find a spot for JJ, who had a monster year in the minor leagues last year, his first full season, made it all the way up to AAA, mashed there. He's going to play second or third, one of the two, whichever one needs a dude is where he's going to go. He comes up as a shortstop. Mason Wynn's there, so you don't need to have him play shortstop. So second or third, whoever gets traded away. If it's Donovan, and then they could move JJ to third after Arenado's gone, or they have Gorman that can play third and JJ goes to whatever it is, they'll figure it out. But that's a guy that I think a lot of fans are hoping will be on the opening day roster. If he's not there opening day, he's going to be up there whenever that first date is that you can start bringing the guys at, like in April, whatever that one date is. And we're going to see him in St. Louis in 26 for sure.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about a signing that took place that caught me by surprise. All right, quickly, let's do the trivia question from yesterday. It was, what franchise is the only one to never have a home run champion? And notice how I phrase it. What franchise is the only one to never have a home run champ? Do you know what the answer is, JD?
I don't. Angels?
Okay, well, you know what? You and Jackson Van Hooser guessed the Angels, but no, they've had a home run champion, including Reggie Jackson at one point. Pigskin Petey guessed the Padres. Nope. They had one recently, and with I almost said Machado. No, it was Tatis, and also they had Caminiti. A lot of people guess the Nationals Expos. Bryce Harper would like a word with you. But Gavin L. Luhash 2994 is an everyday Sully, says the answer to the question is the Houston Trash Rose. And that's correct. There you go. That's
Houston,
the answer to
really?
the question. Houston's never had one. Never had one. They've come close. They've never had one. Hey, Devin Williams went to the Yankees last year and had a disastrous season. So much so I did a whole podcast comparing him to a critical subplot in the film Citizen Kane, where Charles Foster Kane kept pushing his wife onto the stage to be a great opera singer, even though she didn't have the talent. And Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone kept pushing Devin Williams onto the mound to be a closer, even though he clearly couldn't handle it. His ERA, he lowered his ERA to 4.79, which means after he had a very good month, he lowered it so he was only letting up more than a run every other inning, which you don't need as a closer. He obviously did not fit in New York. Obviously, the bright lights of the big city were too much for him. So naturally, the Mets said, give me some of that, and rewarded him with a 3-year deal. I thought he was going to get a 1-year deal from someone
Yeah.
saying, hey, he had a fluke bad year, and a team like the Padres or a team like the Royals, a smaller market team, would say, hey, then you get out of the bright lights. But no, the Mets took one look at that and said, for the next 3 years, that's our guy. For a team that spent money like Richard Pryor and Brewster's Millions last year and couldn't catch the Cincinnati Reds for the final spot in the playoffs. What? Well, I know that Stearns, who runs the squad, knows him from his Brewers days and probably says, I know he's better than that. But 3 years after that year? And
Yeah.
closers flame out really fast. The
Yeah.
hell? What do you think of this?
I'm a little confused by it as well. The 3 years thing with no opt-outs, no like
Yeah,
security blanket for the Mets to get out of it if they need to, or for Devin to get out of it and make more money if he needs to. That's like unheard of these days, right? Everybody signs multi-year first-year opt-out. Isn't that the rule? I thought they had to
yeah.
do it these days, the way things are going with the contracts. But yeah, a bit of a shocker. I was on board with you as well, thinking that he was going to go to a smaller market team, perhaps someplace a little more cozier, a little more comfortable, and to stick around in New York, man. Look at the cojones on Devin Williams, man. He says, I'll try it again. Why not? Give me 3 years of this.
I think I can't remember where I predicted he was going to go. I think I predicted he was going to go to, like, I thought maybe San Diego, or maybe I can't see. I can't remember. I got to go back to that episode. But my thought process was he's going to get a 1-year deal because some teams probably say, look, he's not as bad as he was the first
Right.
half of the season. So let's sign him to a 1-year deal so he can prove it. And if it is, because we've seen how fast closers can flame out. You look at,
Yeah.
if you have a list of who like the 5 or 6 best closers are in any one year, go to 5 years down the line and do that
They're
process
gone.
again. You're going to see 1 or 2 names show up. The pitchers
I got one for you right here. Ryan Helsley last year. He was
yeah,
the NL reliever of the year for the Cardinals in 24 last year. Starts to fade away a little bit, goes to New York, isn't a closer anymore, and gets shelled for whether he's tipping pitches or whatever. But it happens that quick all the time. You're absolutely correct.
I mean, think about Koichi Uehara, whom I loved when he was a pretty good reliever for Texas and everything. He comes to the Red Sox and he has one of the great runs, becomes a great
Mm-hmm.
postseason hero, and 3 years later he's gone.
Yeah.
It's like it really, it's a Rubik's cube. It happens that fast. Friend of the podcast, Sean Doolittle, had,
Yes.
sparked with the A's, and then in 2014 he really arrived as an all-star closer and was a stud for them when they won the Nationals won the World Series 5 years later.
Yep.
And I adore you, Sean Doolittle, but after that it was pretty much over. And so Williams is one of those pitchers who had his run he had in Milwaukee was fantastic. And last year he obviously had the grotesque start to the season. But to think, oh, I think this is 3 years worth. For a franchise that's trying to show that, hey, I know we're going to spend money smart this year. This is a big gamble because I have a feeling he wasn't getting many 3-year deal offers.
No, I agree. I wouldn't suspect he was either. Like, again, most of the stuff when it comes to closers, short term, because of how volatile it can be in that particular role. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to lock people up
Nope.
that long. And, to move on from Edwin Diaz, who we think will sign somewhere else. I saw the report
I think he's
as
going
well
to
that,
LA. I think he's going to go. I predicted he was going to go to LA. I think he
yeah, and
took
it
one
makes a
look
lot of
around.
sense considering how many issues they had this year with their bullpen, and yet they
Yeah.
still go on to win a championship. No biggie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just when you got all the money in the world and it doesn't really matter. I guess it's easy to make those decisions to give out 3 years. It's not something the Cardinals are going to be doing anytime soon, Sully.
But you know what? They probably shouldn't. You
Yeah,
probably shouldn't. So
yeah.
anyway, well, look at that one. Really, I hate to do a double take. And this is, by the way, a day after I said the Dodgers signed Justin Turner. I didn't want to say.
This
Well, it
one's
turns out
legit, though.
this
This
was
isn't your
legit.
friend
This was, by
texting
the way,
us.
I quadruple checked it. Jeff Passett from ESPN and John Heyman of the New York Post both report that. So don't blame. It's not my friend texting me, and I didn't see
And
the
there's no
question
question
mark.
marks after
Yeah.
it either. It looks like it's all
Okay.
real.
There are question marks. There are many, many question marks. All right. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB and Locked On Cardinals. We're both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcasting network. I brought about a trivia question here, one that has a little bit of sarcasm to it, and it's Cardinal
Okay.
related. So I think, but don't answer if you know the because this is for tomorrow's audience here. How
Okay.
did the Cardinals reward superstar and manager Rogers Hornsby when he led the team to their first World Series title in 1926? That's right. When he led the team to their first ever World Series title as a player manager, how did the team reward him? Put your answers right down here below. JD, tell people where they can listen to your great show.
All right. Well, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. LO_Cardinals is where you can find us on the social medias. You can also follow me at JD Sports Radio on the social medias as well. But yeah, we're all over YouTube. We're everywhere you get your podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, all of it. We're right there with you. If you're a Cardinals fan and you've got some interest in what it's like for Cardinal Nation right now as they struggle through this rebuild, we've got you covered with all the info.
MySpace, Friendster, are probably on there too. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. And I'm your pal Simon at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, talking about the St. Louis Cardinals doing that unbelievably terrible thing, which is rebuilding, which is what they probably should do. This has been, oh yeah, all right. Sorry, we'll bleep that out later. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Cardinals crossover. He's JD Hafron. I am Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I didn't butcher your last name, did I? I said Hafron, right?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Okay. That's why we're the #1 sports podcast network. We know each other's last names. I'm glad it's not Zepchinski.